And today I'm here on behalf of Satyama Publishing to talk to you about an amazing board game. It's called Quintangled. I don't know if you've seen it before, but it is magnificent. It's for ages 14 and up. And it basically breaks down the hero's journey and talks about how our spiritual lives are and all the things that we will come upon and how impactful strategy and consequences and accountability really play into our lives. And so it's not only a teacher of that to younger people, but it's really fun for all ages to participate in. So we have the creators, two of the creators. We have Julie Loar, who is one of the creators, and then we have Karen Stuth, who is a creator and a publisher. And it was also created by Sue Lyon, who did the artwork. And it's just really magnificent. I'm going to show that again because there we go. I love that. Look at that guy right there. Anyway, so welcome, ladies. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tracee.
So my first question is, what is Quintangled? Like, what does that word mean? Is it a word? How did you come up with that?
Well, it's a word now.
Yeah, it is a word.
It's kind of a word that we made. But first of all, Quintangle is a visually exciting board game which brings together the elements of strategy, chance, and destiny, and makes the players aware of those three elements in every choice point that we approach in our life. Not just big choices, but the small ones too.
Right.
As a player, you're going to, with a roll of the dice, you're going to enter the mysterious realm of Quintangled, where you're going to, in the first half of the game, encounter perils and pitfalls, and you're going to battle forces, and you have to do a shadow act, and then you enter the abyss. And there's our board game. There's the board created by Sue Lyon, just, a fabulous graphic designer and one of our developers. But Julie will tell you more about the hero's journey as we go along. But success in this game is a function of strategy and the opportunities that are presented by rolls of the dice. So that is the quirky element of destiny, but we know that we create our own destiny. So when we roll the dice and, encounter something, well, we created that. But the strategy, the opportunities presented by the rolls of the dice, and the element of fate and magical aid all come together as the players try to win the game. And later we'll tell you what's different about the game, about how to win the game, because it's the first person to go home doesn't necessarily win. So anyway, that's Quintangled in a nutshell. Quintangled was a word suggested by Julie. And first, we originally thought we were going to call the game Quintile, I think. And we switched over to Quintangled because of the way that the game board was coming at it. And is, a tangled set of paths and many opportunities to choose your path, go this way, that way. There are even portals built into the board, so you can jump from one side of the board instantly to the other as soon as you figure out where these portals are. So that's Quintangled in a nutshell.
So Quintangled. So Julie, where did that word come from? Did it come to you in the middle of the night and you woke up and went, oh, Quintangled?
Sort of, but it was more of a process. So here's a short thing of the game board, and this game was inspired by the work of Joseph Campbell, who conceived the heroic journey. We'll talk more about that. And when we were working on the board early on with the process, I realized that we were designing it in 5 stages: depart, descend, the abyss, then return and restore. And so in the very early stages, we were seeing it as a 5-sided shape, which is a quintile in geometry. But then as we went along, just as Karen was saying, all the different ideas And it's one of the most interesting parts. We'll probably have more to say about that, about the creative process and how this unfolded. But one of my favorite things about this that happened not on purpose, or whatever not on purpose is, through guidance, is Quintangled. Quintangled is like a contraction of quantum entanglement in physics. How the whole universe is connected, and an electron at one end of the universe can move and another responds. And so we didn't do that on purpose, but it's certainly brilliant wherever it came from.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the physical game just for a minute, because there's a part of the reason I'm expecting that you didn't set it for 14 and up is because there's lots of little there's cards and toys, but there's lots of small pieces.
Well, we set it for 14 and above for two reasons. The first reason is that we really believed that it would be more of an adult game of strategy, and we didn't really understand the ability of 8-year-olds to 14 to strategize, which I've been corrected in my thinking about that since then, because they're really quite good at it. They're like really good at it. Yes. But the other reason that we didn't is because there is a rule out there that you have to ban something for 14 and above in order to not get it tested for a choking hazard, which was around $50,000. And so a game manufacturer actually suggested just ban it for 14 and above, and that's what we did. So
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
It does have a choking, I just want to say, it does have a choking hazard warning on the box. It does.
Right. So when somebody starts playing the game, at what point do you think they clue in to the impact of it?
Well, I'll go first, but I want Julie to jump in on this, because we both have hosted Quintangled nights at our house, and I've held several at Unity churches in the area, and I actually have a group of kids from my neighborhood that come and have Quintangled tournaments in my dining room. They're amazing, but I think that you have to play the game once or twice just to get down how to play the game. Yes. But then after that, you start to really, and you can see it on people's faces that they begin to go, oh, so every choice that I make is going to determine a completely different set of outcomes from, whatever I'm deciding to do. I'm going to go this path. In the game, you can go backwards, you can go forward, you can go sideways. You just can't do that in the same turn. But, just like life, you can choose to back up. You can choose to go forward. You can say, this looks good over here. And when people start to figure out how the game is really, really about the impact of our choices, the outcome of our choices, and no matter what choice you make in the game, then you have to own it. You have to own that choice going forward. And I think it's a little bit different for everyone. But when they get to that point and the big aha moment comes, that's really exciting. Julie, do you want to add to that?
I would agree. I think that's been our experience. Like Karen, I've hosted game nights in my home and at our local places here for larger groups of people even, and I wander around. And I think that one of the things that people seem to recognize after playing it once or twice is they begin to recognize the characters that appear in almost every story. There's a hero, there's a mentor, there's an ally, there is a villain. And so all of those, what we call archetypes, and people begin to recognize them and they begin to understand, because they're all present in some way or another in the game. So people begin to see. And one of the things which you'll probably get to are their reaction to the wisdom cards, and how often, I'm sure that's Karen's experience too, someone will say, that's exactly what I needed to hear right now, which is really wonderful.
Right. One of the things I thought was very interesting, so you give a general overview of what they need to accomplish in the game to get through it. And one of the things I really liked is that they have to perform a shadow act. Do you want to explain what a shadow act is, and why you are required to do that to get to and leave the abyss?
Well, I can start. Karen can about it too. It's interesting, in the process of the game, we came upon that kind of later in it, when someone who was an expert in Dungeons and Dragons said, in some ways this is much too nice and it's not exactly like real life. And
Right.
where is that? And we all face that. And so each of the 8 characters in the game, which we'll talk about, has a positive side and has weaknesses. So the idea of the shadow act is facing what is that darker shadow side of us that we really don't want to see. And it's fascinating because it's the thing that is, for most people, I would say most people, the most difficult. And so they really have to own a lot of their own feelings of, I have to consciously do something that I don't really want to do, but it's part of the psychology of learning to face that in ourselves, because we all have it. Karen, what's your take?
Give us an example of a shadow act.
Well, a shadow act might be, confronted by your, dark ally or something like that. You send another player back to the threshold, which is all the way back to the beginning. And it's very interesting how reluctant players often are to do their shadow act. They don't like it, and they wait until the end. And actually, and you have to do that before you go into the abyss, but if you wait too long to do the shadow act, you're going to hurt people more than if you just do it early on. So my technique has always been, as soon as I leave the wizard's what do we call it, Julie? The wizard's castle. Yeah. I like to do my shadow act right then, as soon as I get on the path, because I can send somebody to the other side of the board and help them.
Right.
So you actually save them, 20 moves by doing that. But I think, the reason for the shadow act is, this is not a game of world domination. This is not a game of war. You're not trying to kill other players or anything like that. It's a game of personal dominion. It's about dominion over yourself, and acknowledging that, no matter what archetype you have rolled to become in the game, because everybody is an archetype, those archetypes each have a shadow side. And it's acknowledging that you have a shadow side. And I think the more uncomfortable people are with the shadow act, that tells you something about yourself. Like maybe you care very much what other people think, or you don't want to acknowledge you have a shadow side, or, I've seen a few players that actually are like, oh, I'm going to save.
That's hilarious.
In fact, Julie and I have been told a couple times that they wish there were more shadow acts. And,
yes.
But it's not that. It's about the universal journey. It is, fundamentally what the game is about. And that does include acknowledging all parts of ourselves.
Right. So how did you come up with the idea to do this game in this way?
Oh, I want to tell that story because it's a good one. Julie was visiting me, and we had decided we were having breakfast, and we were sitting in my kitchen talking, where most of Quintangled happened in Karen's kitchen.
Yes. Yes. Most important room of the house.
Well, we were strategizing, or we were, brainstorming some product ideas. And she said, I've always wanted to do a game about the hero's journey. And like my antenna went straight up. I'm like, oh, tell me about that. That sounds interesting. And I knew that Sue Lyon, who's another of the publishing of Satyama Publishing's authors, she wrote a charming children's book called How the Trees Got Their Voices. But she had told me once that when she worked at a big tech company, that she, as a graphic designer, she was charged to help HR build a board game to help people learn the company. and it was, I mean, the story of it was fascinating. And so immediately I thought, oh, we've got to have Sue. And so we invited Sue. We set up a meeting and we invited Sue to come down, and she was in. And
Wow.
first thing was they started working on the archetypes, and went to work on that. So, and then the names of the archetypes, and what their symbols were going to be, and their mentors, and that was the first real concrete thing that got built. But this game is truly the brainchild of Julie. It's Julie's brainchild. Wow. We just were there to be her journey partners and help her bring her idea forward, but it would never have come to fruition without her vision for it. It's really hers.
So what gave you
hold up the archetype cards real quickly, of which there are 8 that I can't tell what I'm doing if you can see them in the camera. Yes,
but we can.
There are 8, and we worked on that. There are in most systems there are often 12, which people sometimes try to align with the zodiac signs. The fit is not that great always, but we have a knight, a lover, a jester, a healer, a sage, a dreamer, a monarch, and a priestess. So those are ours, and each one has a purpose to their journey. Each one has something to fulfill and a shadow. And so, as Karen says, that was wonderful when we built all of those. And one of the things that I think is great, and it's fascinating to me, there are some people who resist the idea of rolling the die to find out who they're going to be for the game. Instead, they want to choose the one they like. And so,
but it's a game of fate. So
yes.
Right.
And so that's been interesting to see. And one of the ideas is that you can learn while you're having fun about these different archetypes, because we meet them. We might have a father-in-law that acts like a monarch, and we might have a sister who's a healer, and you learn more just also by having fun as we go through.
And Tracee, I want to add that, Sue Lyon had been involved in making a game for a corporation that she worked for, but really none of us were game developers at all. We'd never done that. We never thought of doing it. We kind of, fumbled our way through the darkness, but one of the things that we did do is I bought all these board games that we were interested in knowing more about. We played board games, so we would spend whole weekends playing board games so we could identify, like, here's what we liked about this game and here's what we didn't like. This part wasn't fun. Or, I mean, one of the reasons I think that we ended up with like all the things that are in the game is because, they were missing from other places. So when you buy Quintangled, the first thing you do is you get the Wizard's Welcome. It's sitting right on top, and it tells you what the game is about. And then on the back, it tells you how to set up the board, which a lot of people skip that part. But it does tell you exactly how to, do that. And then there's, some pretty detailed instructions. So, everything that we thought was missing from other games, we tried to overcome those weaknesses in our own.
Right. I really enjoyed all of the different. I want to talk a little bit about all of the wisdom cards, the fate cards, the magical aid cards, and the earth wisdom cards. And I would like to give a little sample to people of what that. I'd like to have one of you choose one from each of the decks, so that we can have a little bit of a sample of what comes through and what we do with those cards.
Well, Karen can take this one. I actually must have been on your same wavelength, Tracee, because I thought that would be a great idea. So there are oracles of ancient wisdom that live at the 4 corners of the board, and they represent sort of the place on the heroic quest where the pilgrim meets and receives some sort of powerful wisdom. And so we made them the four elements of fire, earth, air, and water. Dragon is the oracle of the corner of fire. And the one I picked, I thought they ended up being I picked them at random. I didn't choose them. So the one for fire is excitement. and now I can't see without my glasses. Spread excitement wherever you go, as the fire will burn bright and light the path. So all of the fire cards have to do with qualities that relate. The air is eagle, and that one is counsel. Be wise enough to learn from your teachers. Water is whale, and the one that came up was devotion. Devotion is the elixir of pure love that strengthens your resolve. And earth is sphinx, and the one that came up is persistence. A temple is built by laying one stone at a time and keeping the vision. So that's an example of one from each of the 4 suits. And the wisdom cards, everything, and maybe it's a good time to say this, and Karen can jump in. She mentioned earlier that the person who gets home first isn't necessarily the one who wins. Everything in the game has points, and the points represent wisdom. So symbolically, it is the wisest player who wins, not just the one who races to get home first. And the wisdom cards have the most points of anything in the game. And Karen, do you have the score sheet handy?
I do have the score sheet handy, or maybe I thought about that, but
so we printed it so people can make copies. It's available to download more copies from
yes, and if you use up, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 9 score sheets on here, but you can also download more from Satyama on our website of free downloads of more score sheets. But you can get points for using your superpower, your talisman power after you've left the abyss. You get points for returning home first, for meeting your animal ally. For each of the heroic acts in the second half of the game, you must do heroic acts for other players. And each wisdom card, each of the 4 element wisdom cards, like air, for example, those are worth points. Getting the element jewels on your character card are worth points. The peril rings, the magical aids, the shadow token, those are all worth points. So, that one of the things that, players learn over time is when playing the game, they want to pay attention to how many wisdom cards the other players have, and how they're filling up their character card. There are things to fill up on here, and sometimes you may have your card completely full. You've done everything you're supposed to, but you choose not to go home because you're going to travel around a little bit more and get some more wisdom points. And because it's always surprising when people decide, I'm going to go home first, I think I have everything I need, and they get home and the person to their left has double the points that they do, and so they didn't win after all. And but winning is about wisdom. So
how do the players know that the game is over?
Well, the game ends when a person goes home. When any of the players go home, the game ends.
Okay.
And that's in our rules. But we also, I just want to add that we also believe in house rules. So if people want to make their own house rules and play the game their own way, fine with us. I mean, we're good with that. And, use the game as you want to. I know a couple of people that actually use the game sort of like a tarot deck. They're trying to figure something out. And so they'll play the game, and then they'll say at the end, yeah, I'm pretty clear now about what I'm supposed to do. And that was a surprise. We didn't plan that. So,
yeah.
But I do want to call out one thing about the game, something that Julie created for the people that play the game. There is a booklet in here if you want to learn more. You don't have to read the booklet to play. You can never read the booklet if you want to, but she wrote this wonderful thing called The World of Q, A Different Look, and it's all about the archetypes, about the hero's journey. I mean, any questions that you have, about some of the elements of the game are in here. So if you want to go a deeper level, that's what this is for, but it's not necessary. You can never read it if you don't want to, but it is there for people that, want to keep going, because there's a lot of depth to the game. You can keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper into it. The more that people become their character, the more, I love your kitty, the more they really start to comprehend the game at the level at which we hope everyone will eventually play. So
absolutely. So give us a few of the characters, like a little more in depth. Like each of you give me your favorite character. Or the one that you end up playing the most. Because I know sometimes when there are games of chance, we end up getting the same thing, the same card over and over again. And I'm sure this happens when people repetitively play the game, is they end up getting the same character every time. So what's your favorite characters?
Julie?
It's a good question. I think my favorite character would be the priestess, because that's where I aspire. I probably am categorized more in my life like the sage. I'm the one who wants to know everything and research and
right. And do you often end up as the priestess when you play?
In a powerful way for good is where would be the one I aspire to the most. Karen, how about you? I don't think we've ever discussed this.
No, we never have. It's such a great question. So I think the one that I most aspire to is the green healer. I like everything about her. But the one that I've drawn the most often, in fact, maybe like 70% of the time, I tend to get the monarch. And so I'm like over the monarch now. I'm ready to, but I keep rolling a 7. I actually really like quite a few of them. I think only once have I ever drawn or rolled a 2, which is Mirabella, the orange lover. And that one really fascinates me. And I think only once have I ever been Lamberto, the sky blue dreamer.
Interesting.
So I've been, many of the rest of them. I noticed that when we play, the three of us would constantly play the game to try to figure out what we want to do next. And Sue would frequently be Ferris the Red Knight.
Yes.
So she was Ferris the Red Knight. So
yeah. And it's a great question. Yes, that's the priestess. It's a great question, Tracee. And as I said, some people just want to pick who they want to be. And so it's been fascinating. But I think in the world of Q that Karen was showing, there's a 2-page spread for each of the characters, which details their element, what their heroic quest is, their flaws, their strengths, their talisman, and it explains at a deeper level for anybody who wants to. The character cards are like your roadmap for the game to keep track of what you've accomplished and what you need to do.
Right.
And it starts out with everything that needs to happen on this side first, and then once the player becomes a hero, then it moves to the second part of the game, so they can keep track.
So it was interesting when I played. A couple of times I got Mirabella, the orange lover, and so I want to take a minute to talk about. We talked about shadow acts, but there are also heroic acts, ways that you can help your fellow players. And you can choose up to 3 and get points. And so for Mirabella, the orange lover, we have the options of mirror. I can help another player safely pass through a peril. Compassion. Enigma, the Sphinx's protection sends another player to an earth element space. Selflessness. Generosity allows me to change places with another player. I used that. That actually really works out sometimes. It takes a lot of you've got to be really present when you play this game.
You do.
You really do. Bear, which is Callisto's strength, sends another player to the verdant valley. And then heart, my awakened heart creates the heroic act of my choice. And so I really liked how this really organizes for each character the different things that they can do to serve another person. And oftentimes in serving another person, it can serve you as well.
And if I can add that, the way that the game is set up, it's in 2 parts. So in the first half of the game, you're doing the left-hand side of the card, but that is about, your personal journey. So the first half of the game is about your personal journey, visiting the oracles of each element in the corners, collecting the tokens to fill those in and doing your shadow act. And then and only then can you go into the abyss, which others might call it the dark night of the soul.
Right.
But you can't go into the abyss where the transformation to the hero occurs until you've done your personal journey around the board. And then when you do that, you get your talisman token. Like here, it's the mirror, and on the back of it is a superpower. So you get another superpower. And then you do the second half of the card. You need to visit the heart center so you can meet your animal ally, and it also gives you another superpower. But the second half of the game is really about you in the world. It's about you and your relationship to the other players, and it's about service. So this is about learning, and this is about service on the other side. And the development of those concepts was really just sort of like over time. We were like, oh yeah, we didn't sit down and say, let's make this a 2-part game from the beginning. We didn't do that, but these things just began to emerge, and we really felt like, and I think Julie especially, you really felt like that Joseph Campbell was working with us when we were making this game. We all felt that, but especially Julie. And
one of the things I really loved about it is that, like, there are a lot of people out there who probably think they were born into the abyss.
Right.
and this really,
especially right now,
right? It really helped you metabolize and comprehend that the abyss is a privilege. It is a rite of passage. It is something that is it transforms us to the point of empowerment. And I thought your game really brought that out. Not even brought it out. It starts there. It says, yeah, you haven't even earned the right to be in the abyss yet.
That was beautifully said. That was beautifully said, Tracee. I wish you could write that down, but I guess it's
please send that to us in an email. We love that.
That's wonderful. And I think that the three of us have talked about this a lot, that the process took us 5 years over time to do this. It didn't happen in one weekend in the kitchen. And I think that as we look back, the journey of creating the game was itself a heroic quest. And boy, we had challenges at times, and we learned. And I think in some ways we probably went, although we've never chronicled it in that way, we went through all the stages. And what you said about the abyss is really true. And the most famous probably movie description of that is when Luke Skywalker meets Darth Vader in a cave. And he sees his own face in the face of Darth Vader. It's a literal alchemical transformation where the person undergoes a heroic metamorphosis. And then the idea, as Karen said, is to go out in the world and how can you be of service, and how and so one of the hopes that we have always had is that people would play it at a deeper level, and you can still have fun while you're having insights. And I just wanted to share, there's somebody in my little town where I live who has a 7-year-old, and she told me they literally have dozens of games. They think they have every game known. This is his favorite. And she asked him why, and he said he loves the board and how it's drawn. He's 7, but his favorite part are the wisdom cards.
Yes.
Just blew me away. And so Karen was mentioning that earlier about the kids in her neighborhood and how much they get. Maybe they haven't been really discouraged by life experiences, and they're still open, still have that kind of, I don't know, wise quality in them.
Yeah, and I also think too that children, we don't necessarily give them credit for. Oftentimes they are born with wisdom that they are never given the opportunity to express or live in. And
I would say that the one mistake that we really made was banning it for 14 and above, because we were just wrong about that. And you're right, Tracee. I mean, these young people that are coming in now are so remarkable, and
Yes.
kids today are so advanced in their thinking. And so when they all show up on the door, with their Quintangled in hand, and it's not like I have anything to say about it. They kind of like slam the door when they barge in. They go, "We're gonna play." I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna work in here," but they really are very excited about all the choices that they have,
Mhm.
and they really, really love that. And one of the things that we noticed, and this may have been true when you played the game as well, but we even do it among ourselves, is in the second half of the game, we're always helping each other. Like, oh, but you could go this way and then jump over here, and so
Right.
I think the game invites and has produced a lot of collaboration between the players. But again, it's not a game of world domination. It's a game of personal dominion. And the more you play it, the more you'll recognize that in their own life. And I laugh at myself all the time. Something will happen and I'll think, oh, back in the abyss. Look at me.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little more about the process, not just I want to get to the development process and what was fun about it for you, but were there times that you guys were at each other? I mean, did it take you through the personal stages in your personal relationship that you work through with each other?
Yes, most definitely. And my goodness, we all emerged stronger, better, a better team because of that. But at the beginning, because first of all, we've never developed a game before, I have to just honestly say we didn't know what we were doing. And I think that the way that Quintangled came out was a piece of luck, but I think we had some help, but we definitely did that, disagreeing about certain things. But I think we got better in problem solving as a team as we went along as well. Julie, what do you?
I would agree. It's so interesting. As we said in the beginning, we each came at this from very different places, even though we all were game players, loved games, and all that represented.
Right.
But I think that without knowing it, in hindsight, it's obvious, and we should have known it. But in a sense, when we committed to do this, we crossed the threshold into the magical realm.
Yes,
and we were worked upon as much as we worked on the game. And it probably for each of us brought up deep issues, brought up self-doubt, brought up, I have to know the answer, whatever it is. And at the end, Karen heroically found the way to actually bring it to life. And that was not a foregone conclusion at any stage. And there were probably lots of places along the way where we could have given up and said, this is too hard, or I want my way, or whatever it might be. But there it is. And
I would imagine. I'm sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I was just going to say that because we didn't work on it continuously, that we would have like a weekend together, and then maybe we wouldn't see each other for like 3 or 4 months. And so when we got back together, we sort of had to go back a few steps each time and try to figure out like where we are and what are we working on and what are we thinking now. But it's interesting, in those interim times when we were apart from each other, I could tell that we were all thinking about the game, because we'd come back with some pretty different perspectives than we had the last time we were together. And so I think that actually aided our process instead of the reverse. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
I would imagine that it probably really benefited you to not know much about creating a game. I always find that the less you know about a new project, the better it is, because you don't want, this way you are just free to discover things how you need to discover them, and fully, imbibe in the magical creative process.
Well, and a massive amount of trail mix and wine helped us along.
Yes, I'm not going to lie. This would be a great game. I mean, we're obviously not for the kids, 21 and up.
Yeah,
But
that's right. Yeah, don't try this at home, kids. But we did, eat a lot of snacks and go out for meals, and and a couple of my cats figured predominantly into the process. One
Yes.
used to leave Sue. She would just was like, decided that Sue was her buddy, and so Sue would reach over her to do work. And,
oh,
I think that she was helping us as well, but. I think a big part of our process playing those games, if there's anybody out there that's thinking of doing a board game, Julie, if you disagree, please jump in. But I think the most important thing that people can do is play games. Play as many games as you possibly can for different ages. Some very sophisticated games. We ordered a couple games that we literally could not play. We could not play them because there were no instructions. We were like searching the internet, trying to figure out how do you play this game. There was, a lack of instruction, and it wasn't intuitive, and but those were helpful to us as well. So we probably went too far in the other way and providing too much instruction, but mostly people have appreciated that. And
absolutely.
No,
Well,
I
you
do agree. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just going to say, I do absolutely agree with playing games, because every time you go to a writer's class, the point is always made that writers are voracious readers. And so it just makes sense that people who would be working on games should be people who love games.
That's right.
I agree.
Tracee,
Sorry, Tracee.
Tracee, could Julie talk just for a minute about the hero's journey and the importance of it today, so much that it's actually become a required element in Hollywood? I would love for her to be able to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
And I think that's a really important point. Now you can't even submit a script to Hollywood unless it follows the stages. And as I said, it's typically Joseph Campbell, who is an amazing scholar, discovered it in his own research. And he would tell stories about how part of the reason he discovered what he did was he was a professor at Sarah Lawrence College, which is an all-woman college. And he says he endeavored through this process to be able to explain in terms his female students would understand. And that really enriched his process. So he discovered, or perceived, I guess discovered is not the right word, in cultures around the world that there were these stories that had the same pattern of a quest. And it had the stages. And in some ways, you can say everything in life has beginning, middle, and end. And so he realized that for a journey that mattered, that it all followed the same kind of steps. And of course, the Star Wars movies were done with his counsel. George
Lucas brought Joseph Campbell to Skywalker Ranch to work with him on the script.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so he used everything that Campbell knew to craft and structure the story. And in today's world, I mean, I think that the importance of understanding this is that everything has a process. And for some people, that heroic quest might be dealing with the death of a loved one, or a divorce, or the birth of a child, where here you are, you now have this child and you've crossed the threshold into parenthood. And knowing that you will go through these stages, and it isn't just linear, and that's why we designed the game that way. You can go in one step and then back up and face something else. But that was one of Campbell's main contributions. And then Carl Jung used the idea of archetypes, which he drew from the Greeks, where the planets were the gods and the archetypes. And so the idea that these principles exist, part of what I had hoped from the very beginning, before we ever had our first conversation around Karen's kitchen table, is wouldn't it be great to have a game? Because life is always compared to a game. You roll the dice, you make a choice, you make a move, and maybe you advance and maybe you retreat. And so that was the idea, that those two very powerful ideas, which are universal, could be incorporated into something that would hopefully be fun. And you might learn something that would help you in your life as well. Anything else, Karen, you want to add to that?
Well, no, only that, now that we've said that to you, Tracee, you're going to start watching movies and you're going to start seeing, it doesn't matter what kind of movie it is, a Western, a sci-fi, a rom-com, even Disney movies, there's the template. It's always there. It's always running underneath, and it's really fascinating to me.
The Lion King is another perfect example.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah,
you could plot each one of the stages of the journey in that movie.
Yes. Now, I want, for each of you, I want you to tell me and our viewers today, what did you learn? What was the biggest things? I know you probably learned 1,000 things, but what was the most valuable or most important thing that each of you learned through the process of creating this game?
Julie, do you want to go first? I know what the answer is for me, but would you like to go first?
I certainly can. And I think there were multiple levels. I think that you made the point earlier, Tracee, you did it really well. I think that if you start on a project thinking you already know how to do it or know all the answers, then your mind is filled with preconceived notions and prejudices. Right. We really began with beginner's mind. And I think that I would say, because it did take a long time and we did go through so many stages and experiences, I think I learned a lot about the creative process and that it's not over till it's over.
Right.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
I would say for me, first of all, when you're approaching something that you've never done before, don't get too process oriented. Just wade in. Just stick your toe in the water or throw yourself in the deep end or whatever. And that's what we did. And I think that was a really important because it broke down a lot of paradigms that we had. Right. And I think the other thing that I learned personally from playing the game, and it's always reminded about it when I play the game again, is that whatever choices we make, they're generally not irretrievable. So there will be a chance to get back to where you're trying to go, or maybe you've learned something new is being introduced, even though you've got, your eye on the goal, you're trying to get to the abyss, you're trying to get someplace else, and things happen along the way. Nothing's irretrievable. And I think, that's true. That's very true in life, right? Ladies, everybody with that. But it just really kind of drives it home. So, I decided to go right here, or I decided to go backwards, or I decided to take this path. Well, maybe it's not working out very well for me, but I can choose to, can make another choice. I can, go this way. So.
There's always, and I think we all learned that in the pandemic is that there's always a place to pivot.
Right.
Yeah. You gotta know
very
that,
well put.
You've got to know and choose it, but there's always a place to pivot if you're willing.
Tracee, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, you played the game a couple times. Have you taken anything away from it for yourself?
How much backtracking? I did a lot of backtracking. That was first. The second, I mean, like I said, I think I was saying this to you guys earlier, is it was really potent for me as a full-fledged adult to go in and read. I'm not a rule player. I don't like rules. I like to do whatever it is that I like to do. So there's a lot of rules that you take from at the beginning, and you do need to understand the structure.
Yes.
So, and then I thought, oh wow, with kids, it was a lot for me to participate in, even before I got to the game action.
Right.
But I thought that that's one element that kids, they don't really, they'll go, oh, okay, boom, 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 because they don't have any relationship to rules necessarily in the same way that I do. And so that was an interesting, I'm not going to say it was a hurdle, but there was just a lot for me, like a lot of information for me to metabolize before I got in. But then once the action began to happen. That was why I did so much backtracking. It's like, oh, can I do that? Was that allowed? Oh, but as we got into the game, and then the second time, it really began to gel a little differently, and there was a lot more freedom for me as I got more fully into the game. So I definitely can't wait to play with a glass of wine. I'm going to do so well.
Well, if you want to have a Quintangled game night, I'll send you some more copies. So let me know.
Yes, I definitely do. And how do people get the game? Where can they get it?
Okay. Before I answer that question, I just want to mention that the game can be played by 2, but we think it's the most fun when you have 3 or more. Technically, you could have up to 8 people, but I think it would be very slow and long. And so I think 3 or 4 is really ideal to play the game. But you can play the game with 2, but 3, there's something when you get 3, you get more like interesting stuff happening. So you can get the game from Amazon, from your local Mind, Body, Spirit or game store, and if they're not carrying it, then you need to ask them why not. And also you can buy it on Etsy. The Satyama has a store on Etsy, and then our own website. So that is Satyama Publishing, SATIAMA Publishing.com. So you can buy it from us. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from Etsy. You can get it from stores, and it's carried by many distributors in the U.S. If somebody's watching and owns a store, you can reach out to New Leaf or DeVores and Company or Quanta or Gem Guides or Dempsey. I feel like I'm leaving some names out, so I'll apologize to them later. But it's out there, and
good. Well, good. So to wrap, to put a bow on it, is there anything else that you want to say about the game or your experience as a creator of it?
Well, I think that everybody should develop a board game for the process. The process is fascinating. Because you're thinking on so many levels. You're thinking about, we want to, bring forward our underlying, agenda, if you will, the hero's journey, and for people to understand that. And, but you're also, working on comprehensibility, the user experience. Is it fun? Did we make it too complicated? Did we make it too easy? And, but if somebody's thinking of developing a board game, don't hesitate. Just start somewhere, just do it. And you'll be surprised. I have to look back on the Quintangled development and think that it was really one of the more enriching things I've done in my life. For sure.
Yeah, I would echo that last part. I think the first part, Karen spoke as almost more as a publisher, as a person who was just part more of the creation, and now trying to teach and teach other people and have game nights. It's an immense feeling of pride and accomplishment to have begun with what was probably a simple idea in theory. Gee, let's do a board game based on the heroic some, a naive idea that turned into something that I learned a lot about myself. And I feel like I grew a lot from the experience, and it was tremendously rewarding.
But if Julie says, if you come and say, I want to build a plane, I'm going to say, let's not do that.
Yeah, exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you, again, this has been Quintangled, and I'm with creator and publisher Karen Stuth, creator Julie Loar, and in spirit here is creator Sue Lyon, who is our artist. And you can get this anywhere board games are available, and if they don't have it, they can order it. And ladies, I want to thank you so much, and thank our Chatcast audience. And this has been Tracee Dunblazier for Chatcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tracee.
Thank you, Tracee.
My pleasure. It'll take just a minute.